Chapter 1 of The Broken Vase and Other Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Christine G. The Broken Vase and Other Stories, for Children and Youth, compiled by a teacher. The Broken Vase. "Don't shake the table so, Frank," said Mrs. Mervyn to her little son, a pretty blue-eyed boy, about 6 years old, who was building houses of small blocks on the same table where she was arranging flowers in a very beautiful china vase. Little Frank rose and removed his blocks to another table, where he could build and throw down his castles without disturbing anyone. Mrs. Mervyn was pleased with his ready obedience, and gave him a book of coloured pictures to look at, while she continued to arrange her flowers. A few moments after, she was called out of the room, but before she went, she cautioned Frank not to touch the vase, and told him to remain where he was until she returned, and continued for some time busily engaged with his blocks and pictures, but at length, growing tired of his playthings, he threw them down and walked to the open window. It was a lovely afternoon, the sun was shining bright, and the birds were singing gaily in the trees. He thought how delightful it would be to go out in the garden and chase butterflies, or to sail his little boat in the pond, and he longed for his mother to return. But still she came not, and the little boy wandered listlessly round the room in search of amusement. He took up his picture-book, and turned over a few leaves. But he thought of his rabbits, and threw it down. He remembered he had not fed, or even seen the little animals that whole day. So he went to the door, and listened for the sound of his mother's footsteps. But no, all was still. He walked again to the window. After a few moments he saw a beautiful butterfly winging its way towards him. It alighted on a lovely rose, within a few feet of the window. In an instant Frank forgot his mother's commands. He turned to seize his straw hat that lay on the table, but, in his eagerness, his arm brushed past the vase, and it fell to the floor. Poor Frank stood speechless with fright. There lay his mother's elegant vase that she so much valued as a present from her mother. The butterfly, the innocent cause of all this mischief, was forgotten. At this moment Mrs. Mervyn entered the room. She instantly saw what had happened, for Frank still retained his hat. "My vase! My poor vase!" she exclaimed, the tears starting to her eyes, as she knelt to gather up the fragments. It was not me, mother," stammered Frank. "It must have been pussy." Mrs. Mervyn looked up at her little son. He trembled violently, and the blood mounted to his forehead. "Is this true, Frank?" she asked. He made no answer, and as a servant entered at that moment to assist Mrs. Mervyn, he ran out of the room. His mother observed him, but, preferring that he would confess his fault, allowed him to depart unnoticed. In an unfrequented corner of the garden was an old summer house, falling to decay. Thither Frank bent his steps. It was a favourite spot of his, for it was cool and shady. The sides were covered with vines in all their native luxuriance, and the old gardener, knowing that his little master loved this spot, had trained them over the broken windows, and placed many little conveniences inside for him. It was quiet and still, for no sound could be heard save the hum of insects, and now and then the note of a bird. Frank hurried along the gravel walk, and pushing aside the overhanging vines at the entrance, threw himself in a low seat, and, covering his face with his hands, burst into tears. He wept bitterly. He thought of nothing but that he had told a lie. And to his dear kind mother! She would have forgiven him for breaking the vase, for that was an accident. But what would she say when she knew that he had told a falsehood to conceal his fault? Why did he not confess it at once? For a long time he sobbed and wept piteously, but after a while a sweet calm stole over him, only broken now and then by short convulsive sobs, and then
Sample complete. Ready to continue?